we will we will hand it over to Tom as MC and the wonderful artwork that goes with it.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Definitely a great day to be in Kansas City. It was a little bit of a nerve-wracking game. I think I lost about 10 years of my life last night. But it was all good. So we wanted to start today off with maybe just some reflections on if or how you're using the progression theory model in your work or in your personal life. If you have, I mean, not everybody, certainly this was just a kind of a thought we had. I know that working with Adam for many years, I have definitely used the model in my own daily, weekly planning to think about what it is that what is it that I ultimately want to accomplish? What does thriving look like for me? And I've actually been working this year on trying to focus my work more than ever in terms of where do I feel most alive? What brings me most joy? And so that's been a great journey for me as I try to kind of narrow my own focus to really capture what that looks like for me. So just be curious. I know some of you have commented on the work that we're doing and how you've appreciated it. We can just kind of do a quick check-in. If anybody has anything to contribute around this, that would be awesome. If not, no problem.
I can share. So I hope this isn't answering your question, but I have really liked this image that we talk about at the beginning of every, so we're all familiar with this, yes. Um, and I printed it out and used it in a conversation at work recently, and it clicked for people really, really well. I actually have received a new position within Mid-Continent Public Library. I'm so excited about it. So now I'm over thank you. Oh, you're so sweet. I'm over all programming now, which is great instead of just youth programming. So again, will hopefully help us achieve more goals together as well. But I am really defining the purpose and outcomes, and having a lot of those conversations and doing that with our director and my new boss and really staying up at that high level and talking strategy and really I can tell that even I don't mean this in a negative way, but they don't even have the language for it really. And so I'm kind of focusing them and getting them out of the weeds, but asking them to help me understand where we're going and what they want to see and why it matters, right? The question of why it matters really clarifies things. So I've really appreciated that. And then I plan to use this image again in a meeting in a couple of weeks because I am going to pull all my team together for the first time. And as part of my new role, I am actually combining two departments into one department to streamline tons of things that need to be streamlined. And I want to talk to them about the tactics and actions, and then that's what they're going to be focused on and refining and figuring out what actions lead to the outcomes we want. And so, kind of talking about how we all work together to achieve this thing, it's been like the most beautiful blessing to have this framework in the moment that I'm in my career because I think I can apply it and people have a way to talk about it because every piece is vital. And I think there's a lot of people that are like, the strategic people are just making all the decisions. And that's not true at all. They're setting the direction. And then how we do it and find efficiencies is just as vital. And those are in the actions. And then, of course, I love that all of the actions actually need to help an outcome. And we're going to be doing a lot of editing, right? And so being able to say that out loud in a framework that has nothing to do with any specifics or any people and any feelings is really helpful to me because I'm going to just be able to say, we're going to look at every action and see if it follows an outcome. And if it doesn't, it's gone. And that's the way we're going to be doing business. And so it's not personal. This is the way we have impact. So anyway, thank you. This is helping me do my
Wow,
job.
wow,
And
like
I look like I know what I'm doing because I come here every week. So I really appreciate that.
I am so impressed. I mean, you had the handout right there and love it. Well, congratulations on your promotion and um I mean, this is really Adam's body of work, so he gets all the credit. So kudos. I'm so glad. That was totally just impromptu. I didn't know you were adapting this so much. That's great.
No, it's just been I'm really good at like listening and applying my knowledge, like when I can benefit and look smarter. I try to do that as often as possible. And so I just really felt like this was all coming together for me. And yeah, we talked about it this morning in a meeting. So I have it right here handy. So when you had that question, I was like, well, I'm ready to answer that one. So
And
thank you.
what are a couple of your top strengths? I'm just curious off the top of your head.
Responsibility is my first one. My mind is gone. I
That's
have
okay.
said too much now. Relationships, I don't know.
Okay. I was
I
just
don't
thinking
remember.
maybe input or strategic, but responsibility definitely fits with you trying to kind
Uh-huh.
of make all of this work and taking responsibility for it. So good for you.
Yeah,
Anybody
thank you.
else? Well, Katie, that was great. So we don't have to have another person. I mean, and for me, I mean, I think, speaking of what Katie was saying, it's really around alignment for me. I mean, just aligning, my purpose and my actions, outcomes, just so it's all aligned. And then it sort of has forced me to think about what things can I stop doing that just don't align with what I think is my own purpose and the purpose of my life. And so it's been a really good model for me, especially at this point. All right. Well, Adam, I'm going to give it back to you unless you have any comments.
No, I'm good to go. I was trying to look up Katie's top 5 in time, but it loaded pretty slow. So yeah, but responsibility, relator, learner, achiever, arranger. So um the themes might be, a ranger would be looking for how can I get things optimally configured, and so wasting resources on motions instead of investing them into actions would make sense to someone with a ranger. And yeah, and the learner, yeah, that's the sponge-like thing. And I would imagine the input theme would be high as well. So I like that connection too, because I consider thinking about our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as part of progression theory. I mean, a key part of it, because that's what you're using to that's one of your primary resources to invest, is your natural patterns for how you think, feel, and behave. So if you could harness them and aim them, and by aiming them, we mean from your purpose to your outcomes, the through line. So yeah, even the Strengths Finder and it hints at the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, or that's what the themes are. Your top 5 themes are your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And how do you channel those towards, well, towards what do you channel them? That's the question, right? And I think when I do Strengths Finder, for example, with people, a lot of the comments I get is, I wish I would have done this earlier. I wish I would have known this stuff sooner. Well, why are they saying that? I mean, I think it's implied in there is that because if I could have known this earlier, I would have done things a little differently. I would have invested my resources differently. See, they don't come out and say it that way, but that is the regret. The regret over, I wish I would have known, I wish I could have aimed, I wish I didn't waste my time, or things like that. All right, into today's agenda. All right, I just want to leave it up there because I like the image. It makes me laugh, this person here. All right, now we'll move on. All right, so this is our POM from last time. Now, the reason we did this, and this is April's wisdom here, was, well, look, I mean, we're going to continue with methods, so let's see if we just want to edit from last time. So, so last time we said we're going to focus on methods. That's our focus. Why does it matter? Well, it's time to focus on them. This is where the operational folks have much to contribute, because a lot of our conversation was, maybe a little more abstract or pie in the sky. And yeah, here we can go. We can start digging in. And it's necessary for us to implement our ideas into reality. If we don't focus on methods, then we can't bring about our vision. So what were the outcomes for the meeting last time? What would it look like? Well, we wanted to confirm our outcomes, and we can revisit them again as well. I mean, it's important to lock those in, but we had some good discussion. We zoomed in on them a little bit, shaped them a little bit. Then we we wanted to make sure we had examples of real world challenges and opportunities so that we could make sure our methods were relevant. And that, and then another outcome we wanted was to have the beginning clarity of methods and then next steps for where to go from them. So we can edit any of this from last time, or does it still apply? Any thoughts or reactions for our purpose today and the outcomes we'd like to attain? It might help if I show you the agenda too, just where we're going. So actually I have a little screenshot of it right here. So the idea would be, well, we did our warm-ups, we're doing our POM. We're gonna check in with you about your muses and just, you know, some people we're gonna reach out and touch a muse, reach out and talk to a muse, or gather more information, or even just do more research. Yeah, anything around that. We just want to check in with how your music is going. All right. And then we're going to review the refined methods as a group, just check in with everybody, see how we're doing. This is an act of, you know, refinement, you know, it's an iterative process. So yeah, it'd be good to check in. Then we'll take a well-deserved break, come back and refine our methods further. We were thinking we would get you into small groups and have the groups focus on 1 to 2 of the strategies each, you know, maybe narrow the focus. Then come back, share out what we've done, what we've learned, have some feedback from the larger group. Then we get into our wrap up for the day. I think this will get us pretty far. And based on that, do you think that this is a nice POM for the day, or would you adjust them in any ways?
Well, I'll make a quick note that April, Adam, and I have spent some time sort of planning out the last, because we're not meeting next week because it's President's Day, and then we really have about 6 weeks left to work with you as a coalition. So we've just to kind of let everybody know there is a clear pathway to kind of moving this forward and being able to hopefully leave you with some with a solid plan and actions, and then of course some structure as well to help, you know, move this forward.
Yeah, do we want to put that up? Like, I could grab a screenshot of it. Would it be helpful to just do that? Kind of show like a little bit of the roadmap, April, that you put together? Useful.
Yeah, I mean, I can just describe it in general terms. I don't know, you know, I think the calendar is going to change, and you see that we have a couple of TBD, you know, spots in there, but essentially this session and next session we'll be focusing on really, you know, honing and finalizing those methods. And that's, you know, through that there's going to be a lot of clarity that you know comes out in terms of next steps, the priorities for that, and how we can best set you up essentially. But you know, after we do methods, we'll want to come back to this question of outcome indicators. You know, what is useful data for the purposes of the coalition? You know, what are the key performance indicators? And ultimately that will also connect to a conversation about the dashboard that Tom will actually be taking the lead in building out for you all, essentially based on, if we think of the POM as essentially an action plan, the dashboard is, you know, an interactive, you know, Excel sheet essentially that helps you track who does what by when to be able to make steady progress through your action plan, your strategic plan. So we'll be kind of setting up, talking about data, thinking about what's useful, and kind of getting you all initially set up for the dashboard. And then beyond that, we'll have a couple of sessions that essentially are up to the priorities of this group, and kind of as defined and as become more clear through, you know, finalizing the methods. Of course, we know that, you know, planning community outreach, a potential summit event, for example, is something that is very front of mind for everyone. So that's potentially the focus of you know, something that we can work through with you. Another topic that we talked about was organizational structure mapping. I think in our methods, we're going to be getting very clear about, or more or less clear about the structure of what we're building, but really operationalizing that, taking that from the theoretical to the practical, thinking through if we want a coalition, charter, and then very specifically about leadership, who will be carrying this forward and how. And then finally, the last session, hopefully will be more of a celebration. We'll be going over the final plan and dashboard, and kind of getting you oriented for everything that will come next.
Good. Any reactions to that? By the way, I just want to say, April, you really did that great because you weren't planning on going into that. And that is something that that's just kind of the way April thinks about things, that she put together those dates and just kind of just thinking ahead and, pacing things forward. And it's really helpful. It's just a great it's why the S, T, and O are so important. You need to be strategic. You need to step back and see the big picture. But then to get anything done, you got to zoom right in and make it happen. So yeah, any reaction to that kind of like timeline? I can put it back up on the screen again, but yeah, just to see how that's looking and sounding to y'all.
My only reaction is I don't want it to end. I've been learning a lot and I really appreciate it.
It's fun. And I mean, that is what this is. It's a journey. That's how we look at it. It's not a training, and it's not, group work. It's all of it together. It's coalescing. It's learning or growing together, So it's really been you all have responded so well to this too. Yeah, good. And but does that time frame look good and sound good?
Yeah, and of course, it's just a draft based on, like Adam loves to say, we'll go as far as we can see, and then we'll see further based on, right now, that kind of is what it's looking like. But if there are other priorities that pop up, we'll be able to pivot. So, yeah, we're on a journey.
Oh, cool. And yeah, Tom, thanks for getting us into that too. That was really good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know we weren't planning to share the whole thing. I just thought I'd mention that we're thinking about the dismount, we're kind of thinking about how this is supposed to wind up in 6 weeks. So.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So back into our agenda. Yeah, Muse outreach check-in. Why don't we do that? Let's see and we're right on time. Look, it's like perfect. We're right there. Like we planned it all. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of facilitate this part. Essentially, we gave you all the homework to, 2 weeks ago, we asked you all to start thinking about muses, kind of do a little research, share some information with the group. And then last week we had a challenge to start reaching out to muses for an informational interview. And I know that often, a week is not a long enough turnaround to have that. So I'm not expecting that anybody has a great, readout or anything like that. But I was just wondering if a few people, if anyone is moving forward to reach out to muses, who they are, any sort of progress report on that front.
I can go. I had a chance to reach out to Jenny Bogoni at Read by Fourth in Philadelphia. And mostly we chatted because I hadn't chatted with her in a while, but she's really excited to hear that this is happening, and has made herself, made it clear that she's available if a group of us would like to set up a call with her or talk to her. I didn't try to play the liaison and bring you the information because I thought it'd be more interesting. I think what's particularly interesting to me about Read by Fourth is they're structured very differently than anything we kind of have currently in Kansas City, because I don't get it completely, but they're somehow part of a library system. So I thought it'd be really valuable to have our library teams meet with her and anyone else. So if that's of interest, let me know and I'll set something up and people can jump in.
That would be,
Great,
I mean, is that of interest, y'all? Like a little reaction? Because yeah, it could be the kind of thing, or even that could be almost like a flipped thing where maybe it could be recorded, you know, a couple people could show up, great, and then capture, and then, you know, we can plug it onto our channel. Okay, good feedback. All right, back to you.
If they feel comfortable being recorded, of course. But, you know, in any case, taking notes and being prepared to share out for the group would be lovely. And, you know, as many people as can make that meeting, I think would be really helpful. I love the connection with the libraries too. So awesome. Any other thoughts on muses? Or are there any muses that were brought up maybe before that, you know, given time to reflect, maybe we should prioritize to reach out to?
I can go.
Mhm.
I have reached out to a couple of organizations across the United States, specifically one in St. Louis and one in Detroit. And they're not so much necessarily specifically focused on literacy or education, but on coalition building and collective impact modeling. And one of those in particular, it was started and owned by this former CEO of Build-A-Bear. She has since retired and gone into social purpose real estate. And so how does, you know, looking at how does co-location provide opportunities for collective impact modeling? And she transformed a hospital, an old abandoned hospital in St. Louis, into the Del Mar Divine. If you know anything about St. Louis, Del Mar is sort of their Troost, their version of Troost. Then they refer to it as the Del Mar Divide. And she sort of flipped that on its head and now calls it the Del Mar Divine, which I think is really cool. But I'm going to visit and tour her location later this month.
Wow.
And taking some of my team with me. And I'll bring back notes.
Jillian, I'll check on it, but I'm pretty certain that that is where Turn the Page St. Louis offices.
I think that that's true. And they are one of the organizations that we'll be meeting with.
Great. I think they are all of one person.
Okay, that person is
Pretty
one
lean.
of the tenants we will be
Yes.
meeting. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Jillian. And I think that's a great example of thinking a little bit bigger about muses. You know, what are the different types of things that we want to learn, and collective impact modeling is definitely something that we need to look into. So anyway, I'm curious for the readout. Thank you for that. Any other ideas? Okay. Well, again, I encourage you all to think about muses that you come across, and, you know, don't put up that, you know, oh, it's a different organization in a different city and like, therefore it can have nothing to do with me. Just, you know, they're people that have learned things and are going through processes that, you know, are like you. And I'm sure that they would love to share just like you would like to share if someone reached out to you. So just encourage you all to hold that in your back pocket actively as a tool.
Yeah, I would like to even take it a step further. I think this is an amazingly powerful strategy for what you're up to and about. I mean, first of all, to be knowledgeable and literate about all the literacy movements, and I mean, how else could we build best practice other than knowing what the best practices are? And so I see this being very fruitful for the coalition to, you know, benefit from the learnings of other communities. Yeah, that truly is what coalition is about, and it's what collective impact is about. Yeah, so that would be actually modeling it. All right.
Well, wait, before we move on, I'll just also share, you know, Campaign for Grade Level Reading was mentioned as a muse last time, and it was interesting to me to hear that, because I've actually not thought of it as a collaborative so much as a network, a very powerful network. And I just want to make sure that everybody here realizes that that is, like, I think every member of it welcomes outreach from others. So if you look on that site and see organizations that you're interested about, yeah, if you can't get through to somebody, I'm happy to help. I don't know that I have any actual power to do that, but I've been really lucky to connect with lots of different organizations. And kind of similarly, I'm about to reach out to Reach Charlotte, which I think is a really outstanding organization, and it's led by a gentleman who was from Kansas City and used to be a Turn the Page board member. And he just connected with us on our Chiefs Super Bowl post. So I thought that was a great opportunity to reach out and kind of see what they're doing and how it might inform what we're doing as well. So again, I just want to make sure that everyone recognizes that you don't have to be a member of the network to utilize that network.
All right, folks.
Okay.
I think that's it for the news conversation. Are we transitioning to methods? Yay. All right, cool. That's me too. I think so just kind of collectively reminding us you know, where we are in the timeline. Last week we did that affinity diagramming exercise where we were brainstorming all of the different factors necessary according to our finalized list of outcomes, and started, you know, putting them together in clusters. And so today, I'd like to share back with you, you know, I posted it to Basecamp, so I hope you all have had a chance to look at it, but I'd like to share back with you kind of a slightly polished version of, you know, the list of methods that you all gave to us. We as consultants kind of took a stab at putting them into major strategies, and kind of strategy, tactic, action, kind of where, you know, whatever input you gave us, we tried to organize it to where it was a little bit more structured. And this is just the first draft, so we'd love to get your input. But before we do that, I think probably a good way to jog everybody's memory would be to put the outcomes up on the screen, which I think we have, Adam, as a slide.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I think I took that slide off.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be from last week, so I can pull it up real quick.
I can grab the Google Doc if you need.
We're racing to do it. All right.
Yeah, whoever does it first wins.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, nobody said that.
Okay, I'm good. I got it.
You win.
All right, guys. So yeah, just want to jog everybody's memory a little bit for the outcomes, because of course, whatever methods we develop will need to be aligned with our outcomes. And also, you know, just to make sure these are still resonating with everybody. So, you know, we start with, you know, we talked about having kind of these two clusters of outcomes. So starting with all Kansas City citizens are informed, are empowered, and have access to support. Then we move on to kind of the institutional approach. All KC institutions are mobilized to support the vision of KC as a literate city. Breaking that down, you know, we have a sustainable coalition structure that's supporting this. And we're agreed on our thought bubbles, on our definitions. All of the advocates, kind of broadly defined, for literacy in Kansas City are aligned on key concepts and best practices for literacy across the lifespan. And then last time there was also, I think we reached consensus on this bonus outcome, which is sort of the higher level meta reason why literacy matters and brings wider benefits to the Kansas City community. So this idea that through literacy, the wider Kansas City community will realize long-term community level benefits. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Kristen's group that suggested that we could even put that one at the top as sort of the kind of the reminder of why does it matter, and then this all kind of flows from there. So how are these striking you guys? Since it's been a week since we looked at them, are they still feeling right? Do some nods and some thumbs up.
I'll jump in. I was not able to be here last meeting, but I did watch the recording, and I think that moving this outcome to the top and making it kind of the first point of the conversation, makes a lot of sense because it is the why behind what we're doing. So I think it was like presented as like a bonus option or something, and I was like, no, this is definitely got to get adopted. So good job, team. I feel like that was awesome. That we all kind of came to that conclusion. And I do think it will help kind of set the stage for why people should care about us as a group, why people should care that we're trying to do something, and that it has benefit to all areas of Kansas City. So anyway, I just wanted to voice my opinion that I think that also should be at the top and is very, very relevant to outcomes.
Thank you so much, Katie. Okay. Any last thoughts? Of course, we're always under the good enough rule, so we can always come back to this. And as we get further down into our methods, we may have some epiphanies about outcomes too. So, but good to know that we're all feeling like this is the right fit for right now. Okay, well then that said, I'm gonna jump over to the methods refined document. Give it a second to load. And if you remember, the main question that we ask going from outcomes to methods is, looking at the outcomes, what are the factors that have to be in place in order to achieve these outcomes? What are the areas that we want to put our resources, our time, our action economy? So, where do we want to put actions versus motions? Everything that we do, needs to flow directly, as a method needs to flow directly into outcomes, which then flows directly into purpose. So that said, I'll just talk through real quick some of the thinking behind this, and then essentially open it up for large group discussion. But we broke it down into 4 buckets, and this was purely based on reorganizing what you gave us. So we didn't try to suggest any bonus strategies. We didn't really try to take another step of analysis necessarily. We just wanted to give you as accurate of a reflection of what we heard as possible, and then we can build from here. So starting with a sustainable coalition structure, this would include things like strategic planning, figuring out our POM for collective impact, creating a structure, in terms of organizational structure, governance structure, defining the roles and responsibilities of the core leadership, membership questions. So what are the benefits of participation? What are, can we secure continued commitment from the already participating organizations? Can we onboard and invite new partners? Ensure representative participation and equitable distribution of resources. This is, of course, a huge one. And then other things like reporting methodology, budget, and staffing would all fall under sustainable coalition structure. And you can kind of see, if this is a strategy, these subheadings could be thought of as, tactics, for example. And then we could get more specific about action steps under here. Partnerships. So here we have, this is sort of writ large, who do we need to engage, and how do we need to engage them beyond, core coalition members? So muses, we've already talked about, find muses, maybe field trips, and then building strategic partnerships with organizations, I think in general, but, with an emphasis of outside of the usual suspects, outside of the usual sector. So having literacy champions, partner sponsors, a literacy czar in the mayor's office, partnering with research institutions, those can all fit into ideas or specific actions that we would be taking with, that in mind. Yeah, and tapping into, maybe different partnerships that could be leveraged through the coalition itself, like organizations with national affiliations, that sort of thing. Data evaluation. This is a big one. Although there was not a lot of detail, which is totally fine, on exactly what and how we're going to be doing it from the initial kind of brainstorm.
Can you just zoom in a little? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Is that better?
Yeah.
So, you know, it was called variously a data clearinghouse, a community literacy dashboard in terms of what you all are trying to do, and something about, you know, making sure that we're establishing standards, metrics, you know, for programs, and maybe even beyond. And last but not least, community outreach and engagement. This is much more, you know, partnerships is like, who do we work with? Community outreach and engagement is, you know, how do we communicate externally? So communication system or platform, and things to keep in mind for that. A marketing strategy, so a name, branding, you know, a catalyzing event of some kind, PR campaign, kickoff summit, listening tours. These were all kind of specific ideas that were brainstormed through the community outreach approach. So kind of taking a step back, rather than, I'm not asking you guys to get into the nitty gritty really of any of the innards of the strategies. We're not talking about tactics and actions right now. What I'd love is, are these the right strategies? Sustainable coalition structure, partnerships, data and evaluation, and community outreach and engagement. If we, you know, put our resources into these 4 things, will we achieve the outcomes that we want? Is this the complete list? Is this the right way to organize them? Yeah, any reactions?
So I spent a few minutes looking at this before we logged in today. And I just had a couple of like organization, like reshuffling, like, I don't know if I'm on the right track here or what, but in the section on partnerships, partnering with a research institution or foundation to evaluate outcomes and benefit, could any of that kind of also be lumped in and included in data and evaluation? Or reporting our methodology that's in point 1? You know, maybe we need to prioritize the relationship with a research institution before we start as a part of reporting methodology in that first sustainable coalition structure point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. These are, I want you to think about these right now as illustrative.
Okay.
So I think that's a great question that we can get into when we start getting into tactics and actions under each of these gears.
Okay.
But I think right now, my first question really would just be, I'd love people's reactions on these 4 strategies. Are these the right strategies? And are all of the methods fitting into them the way that you'd like to? If we complete these strategies, which is, you know, complete is a word that you don't really use with strategies, but if, you know, we put our efforts into this, if we're able to make progress on these 4 things, will that reach our goals? Will that fulfill the outcomes?
And I was wondering, could I ask y'all to ponder that while I would like to say a few things on this.
Yeah, Adam holds the wisdom on this one, so go for it, Adam.
Well, I just want to show, sort of a way to visualize it. And and so that's kind of what I want to do here is kind of just take our POM and look at it this way. Now, the way I like to do it is to represent it in this fashion. You have the 4 main gears is what I think of it. And it's like, as you turn these gears, you know, in this direction, you're going to be producing your outcomes. That's the idea. If these are the right gears or the right strategies or the right factors that are necessary for thriving, then if we turn them in the right direction, it should be producing our outcomes. So I want to show you what I do with them here. As April said, we can change these around. Nothing about this is final, but I'd like you to think of this first gear as like a little dial between 0 and 10. And that, you know, maybe 5 is the midway point. And what I'd want to ask you, let's say sustainable coalition structure, if this is indeed a key strategy, I would like to ask you on a scale of 0 to 10, where is it currently in terms of its development? It's a, you know, it's an estimate. It's, you know, so there's no right or wrong answer. Maybe a couple of you might have a thought right away that comes to you on a scale of 0 to 10. Where would you say we are right now in terms of having created a sustainable coalition structure?
I'll
I'm-
weigh in. I think it'd be, less than 5. Just because, I mean, we have some members, key members here, but we don't really have a sustainable structure in my thought, because we don't have any bylaws and, things like that.
Yeah, would
Yeah,
anybody? Go ahead.
I chime in and say we're at the very, very beginning stages. We're at infancy. And so I would say we're at a 2 at the most.
Excellent. For our purposes, that's great for now. Okay. And then I would ask you on a scale of 0 to 10, where would this need to be in order to help us produce these outcomes over here? You see what I'm saying? Like, where would this need to be?
We certainly have to be closer to a 10. So I'd say an 8 ideally, because I'm thinking, I put in the chat, the flywheel. So when I think of the flywheel effect is you're building the momentum. So eventually it's self-sustaining and we're refining and making sure that it stays oiled and is operating correctly. But ultimately that momentum, just like if you were riding a bike, it should be able to go on its own. And I think an 8 would get us to that point.
Wonderful. That's really great. It's aspirational even, but it'd be great. I rarely think a 10, I'll just say this now, is because I think of when you turn this from a 0 toward a 10, each number is increasingly more resource intensive. So to go from a 1 to a 2 probably wouldn't be very hard. To go from a 2 to a 3, still pretty, doable. But to go from a 9 to a 10 would almost take all your resources. Ooh, I think I'm lagging. Did I lag out on you? I think I might have lagged out. But going
We
from
can hear you. I think
Right,
the
cool.
video is just a little slower.
Awesome. So I'm cautious about ever getting to a 10 on any of the factors, but it could be that a factor does require a 10. It's going to be very situational. And again, it's in relation to what is necessary to produce our outcomes. All right. So because to turn this dial requires resources. And this is why strategies will often fail, is because people they make the plan, but they don't think about the resources involved. All right. So what we want to do is go from a 2 to an 8 eventually. And then the idea would be our smaller gears would be how we do that. In order to go from a 2 to an 8, or really we want to go from a 2 to a 3. We don't want to go from a 2 to an 8. We want to go from a 2 to a 3 to a 4, a 4 to a 5. That's progression, we won't go directly from a 2 to an 8. But as we turn this dial, how I think of it is turning the dial, I'm sorry, I might be lagging again. It's by turning the dark blue gears, what we would call the tactics. And how do we turn the tactics? And the green, you can't read, all they say inside of there is action, But the idea is we're setting up our dials is really the point I'm trying to make. And if they're the right dials and we get them to the right levels, then we will produce the outcomes. All right. So I just want to set the stage with all of that as far as the discussion. And I played with the spacing of it. So the next slide I'm going to show you is a little different, but like here's our purpose, here's our outcomes, and then the methods are meant to be here, right? The strategies and the tactics and the actions. So I kind of try to capture it this way. Here's our purpose. Here are our outcomes that we're trying to get to. And then our strategies are these blue ones that convert into these tactics. I try to do it a little bit like that. And we could develop things out further, of course, and then as we turn these tactics using these actions, as Katie helped us remember earlier, actions are the only things that produce the outcomes. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. And this is the through line. This is what we're trying to accomplish. It's why I keep showing these things here. Here's our purpose. Here's our strategies, our tactics, our operations or our actions. And then out here are our outcomes. And the through line is here. And what we want is thick, we want what a mentor of mine would call fat arrows. We don't want skinny arrows. We want fat arrows. We want a fat through line. We want a nice, thick and pronounced and clear and obvious through line that helps us. That's what all organizations are trying to do. And that's what individuals are trying to do. We're trying to really fulfill our outcomes, that are reflective of our purpose. And we do it through STs and Os. All right, I'll stop there because I get a little too excited about this content. But I'll turn it back to you, April, for guiding us forward.
Yeah. And that's great, Adam. I think that really helps put it in context. I love the gear metaphor, and you'll find yourself, I have a hard time talking about, the POM. Once you know the gear metaphor, it's hard to go back to think about the strategies as gears and turning the gears. So anyway, it's a great way to think through it. So coming back to the outcomes, one way that Adam likes to talk about this that might help you understand kind of what I'm asking you is, if we just think about the hypothetical of a garden, right? If you're doing POM for a garden, your purpose is to have a thriving garden. The outcomes are you want to have, a lot of vegetables, and you want to have fun, and you want to be outside. And then you think about, okay, what are the major strategies? And you start thinking, okay, well, I need water, I need sun, I need good earth. And then, okay, well, those are and then the question is, are those the right strategies? Are those all of the strategies? Because if you spend all of your time on those three strategies, light, water, and earth, but then you forgot pests. Pests were an important strategy, but you forgot all about them, which is something that happens to me a lot when I garden. Then you're in trouble because you haven't thought about all of the necessary factors in order to produce your outcomes. So what I'm asking here is, looking at these four strategies, 4 gears, are these the right ones, and are they all of the ones that we need in order to achieve our outcomes? Is there any glaring gaps, is another way to say it. And if not, that's great. And, can pass the good enough test. And then maybe, as we get deeper into it, we'll have more thoughts. But I want to make sure we're asking that question because it's an important question. Don't forget the pests.
I wonder if there needs to be a strategy around training and development of some sort. Because when I look at I have our outcomes and our methods side by side, right? So the question I keep asking myself is, will these things get us to what we said? And so when I think about mobilization, be it of institutions or the larger community, I feel like there's going to be a learning curve. And so if we don't do any type of training or education or something of ourselves and or others, then we don't get to the mobilization piece of what we're attempting to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. And I think that is an important piece to get to your outcomes. Yeah, I'm putting that tentatively just so we don't forget it under community outreach and engagement, unless you put it somewhere else. But I think we could also think about it in terms of partnerships. We can also think about it in terms of membership. I think there could be a lot of places where we put training and education for all sorts of stakeholder groups.
Yeah, I agree. Because I don't think it's going to belong to any one particular stakeholder group. It's going to be seen, it should be seen and implemented across all stakeholder groups.
Mm-hmm. Great, I love that. Yeah, another way to think, I love that as like as a question, another question on the table of like cross-cutting themes, what we want to make sure we're looking at. Well, I think by silence, I'm assuming that this is passing the good enough test. And as we get deeper into these methods, which we're going to be spending a lot more time with them today, getting granular into the tactics and actions, there could be some epiphanies about how we need to reorder things, or you know, things that we've missed that we suddenly realize. So that's all part of the process, but I'm glad that we're starting out, sounds like, with more or less consensus on these guys.
April,
Yeah.
before you move forward, because remember I was in and out last week, so I didn't have opportunity to provide any feedback at the end. But I also what I wonder, and maybe it falls under one of these other categories, is advocacy. And maybe to be very clear, political advocacy. Because we can have the sustainable structure, we can have partnership, we can have the data and evaluation, the community outreach and engagement. But one of the things I think we're all clear on and in agreement with is that there needs to be a movement at the state level to be able to get us to a redesigned system as it relates to literacy, and therefore gets us to our outcomes. Some of that is not going to be local in nature. It will have to be at the state level. And so I don't see anything in terms of advocacy, a bucket for advocacy there. Did we miss that? Are we including that somewhere else? Was it discussed? I didn't look at the video yet, so you guys can help me out.
I just want to say I have been thinking about advocacy this morning myself. I think every coalition, I can't imagine a coalition not building it in. So yeah, if we don't have it built in here, that's exactly right. And that's exactly why we're doing this too, is for us to, I mean, it really is an iterative process. You know, you think, what did I leave out of my calculations? And that is a famous, one of my favorite quotes. It's a J.R.R. Tolkien quote. He said, "It does not do well to leave dragons out of one's calculations when one lives nearby." You know, and so the pests, as April was referencing, or, you know, the leaving out of, oh, we need that. Yeah, you're bringing up some great ones, Katina. This is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I agree. I don't see advocacy explicitly listed anywhere in here. My gut would be, you know, through community outreach and engagement, advocacy could be a big piece of that, as well as in partnerships, in order to build these strategic partnerships with government, you know, representatives, for example. There's going to have to be a policy advocacy component. But if you all think that it's a big enough focus to where we need to have a whole gear for it, then, I mean, that really is up to you in terms of the priorities of this coalition and where you want to put your resources. If you're thinking of advocacy as more of a means to an end, essentially, to be able to turn these gears, or if it's really front and center in what you're trying to achieve.
I remember having a conversation about advocacy, and for me personally, at Reach Out and Read, we have to be real careful because we're attached to KU Med Center. So I think we did talk about it, and that it needs to be, you know, in here at some point. I think what we said was, you know, maybe that's not a top priority, and maybe that's a think about it as we go topic, because it is such a hot topic.
I think I'll tag on to that. Thank you, Jenny. But I also remember having a conversation with Samara, whose last name I forget right at the moment, who was with.
Crawford.
Thank you. Who was with Casey Action Fund, which I think is folding or
Yes.
turning into something else. I'm not sure exactly, but anyway. What stuck in my mind from the conversation with her was that they were a group specifically focused on action and advocacy at a policy kind of level. And she was seeking from this group to inform them. And that might be a way for us to conceptualize what our role can be, because I know like with Jenny, as a 501c3, I don't really know a lot about that fine line between what is sharing information and what is violating what my role.
Advocating, yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely agree, Katina, that it's got to be a part of, I mean, we are a voice for the information that needs to be informing those. So maybe we can think of it on our list as seeking that partnership
Yeah,
to
and
those who can take that information forward in a powerful way.
Yeah, I teach a whole class on nonprofit advocacy, and so I know a little bit about it. Absolutely, a 501c3 organization can engage in advocacy, can engage in political work, but absolutely a core, maybe 20% or less of what that organization does could be focused on advocacy and education of lawmakers or policymakers. If you think you'd want to become much more engaged, then I think a 501c4 would be the model that you'd want to look at. But again, that's all kind of things to consider as we get into the structural aspects of the coalition as well. Is it a full-blown 501 organization? Is it a, loose confederation? So I mean, those are questions to answer, but I know nonprofit leaders are really skittish about, oh, I don't think we can lobby. I don't think we can do that, but you absolutely can. It's just that you do have some limits.
Okay, any last thoughts? Oh gosh, on the question of advocacy. Right now I've stuck it under community outreach and engagement as a potential tactic, and we could maybe expand it from there based on how conversations go. But yeah, any kind of final thoughts? All right. Well, I think we're at break time. No? Okay,
Yeah, but I would like to send people to break with a deep thought. I want to reference this conversation Lauren started below. We were teaching a lesson recently on coalition to high school students, and they're working on a coalition themselves on the issue of human trafficking, there's a coalition in Tulsa that is a coalition against trafficking, and our students want to join it. Well, they want our students to join it. So we were teaching a little lesson on coalitions, and I just posed to them. I said, why do you think that an issue like human trafficking, or another group of our students is working on transition out of foster care into independence? And why is our community so scattered in terms of its treatment of this issue? Like, it's not viewed seamlessly, or as it's just little spots of people dealing with the issue. And the reason, I believe, is a lack of coalition, meaning I think this spottiness of dealing with issues happens because each organization can only do so much, and what they do usually is programming. So each organization might have, 1 or 2 programs or an array of programs for a specific aspect of the issue, but there's no one body coordinating all of the attention to that issue, and so the resources aren't optimally spent on that issue as a community. And yeah, Lauren, I want to see if that relates to what you were bringing up, or if anybody else has any comments, and then we can go into break from there.
Yeah, where are things where we could be concentrating things, they're either dissolved or like what are things that like we think we have we think we're doing something that's making progress and it's being stifled, or it's not really it is a motion and not an action. I don't know.
Good, yeah, thanks. Yeah, and different people have different ideas about the issue because they don't meet together to talk about the issue. And you would think, and I was telling our students, you would think all the people dealing with this issue would get to know each other and talk to each other, but April pointed out that, yeah, there's actually a lot of competition that you would think that you wouldn't expect to be there. And anyway, all right. Yeah, good. Any other thoughts before we head into break on that?
The only thing I'll say, and I think this is obvious, but I mean, I think every strategic plan should be nimble, and you all are doing the best you can at projecting what the plan needs to entail. But I think obviously this should be a living, breathing document, and so I think as you all move forward, I mean, this is definitely something that you can always add to, subtract from, augment in any way. So I did want to say that too. So.
All right, I will set our timer for break for 5 minutes, well deserved, and we'll see you back here. So, let's make sure screen. Okay. Yeah, so just what I was sharing is that our actions are dependent on our tactics are dependent on our strategies go by another name called factors necessary for producing outcomes, and outcomes are an expression of our purpose. So if purpose moves, all these other things might move. So you want to get purpose really locked in, and then outcomes are still you want to get those locked in, but maybe they could be a little more adjustable than the outcomes are. But when you get down here to methods should be, what was the word, Tom? You said, you didn't say flexible, but it was.
I said nimble.
Nimble, yes, nimble. And I think that's absolutely where the flexibility comes in. Yeah, and I just wanted to show you this really quickly while we were here. There's just like a side note about structure. It's a coalition here in Oklahoma that our students are learning about. So the Oklahoma Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and their structure is they have a sort of backbone organization that April brought up last time, and then then they sort of have their committee. Well, they have their 3 focus areas, but these are their committees. This is their structure, which I think could also, they don't call it their strategies, but I think of it that way. You'd want to have your structure represent your strategies. So they have education, training, community awareness, adult services, youth services, policy and data, and law enforcement. So that's their configuration for it. Every organization and coalition would be unique. So anyway, just coming back from break, I just wanted to share those things. We are a little bit behind in terms of overall agenda, but any reactions to any of that?
Okay. I also just wanted to give Katina an opportunity to just kind of close the loop on the advocacy conversation. So we had talked about putting it potentially as a tactic under community outreach. And Katina had some really beautiful words to say, and she was held up on a tech snafu. So if you don't mind reiterating some of that for us as we go into our breakout groups, I think it would be great for further discussion.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I'll try to make it quick. Although I'm very verbose, so just bear with me. In any case, what I was saying is I felt very strongly about it. I felt strongly that it should be a main lever, so to speak. And I think, oftentimes we talk about 501c3 versus 501c4. They can advocate. They absolutely can. Within reason, there are some parameters around the law that tells us what we can and cannot do. However, if we're talking about disrupting systems that haven't worked for hundreds of years, and really turning Kansas City on its head as it relates to literacy, I don't just think we can do that without having advocacy a main part of our work. And so I think, again, that's where that education and training piece comes in, if we are aware of what we can do and courageous enough to do it, then I think we're more apt to shift the system the way that we want. And Lauren had put something in the chat earlier, asking about like, who are the pests that eat the garden? And oftentimes that are our political leaders at the state level. Like, and it hinders us from doing the work at the local level that we need to do to have long-term, substantial impact. And so I want us to be brave enough to actually just call it what it is, take it head on, and as a collaborative group, a real coalition, then we have the strength and the power to stand collectively and really make a difference. But I think if we shrink it out of fear or lack of knowledge, then we do ourselves and our city a disservice. And we don't see anybody really doing this work. Like, let's be honest, Kansas City Action Fund is gone, period. And so Bev and Linda were at an event, and when they tell us they're closing the achievement gap for 7% of the people, I'm supposed to turn flips about that? Hell no. Like, that's nothing. And I just think we got to stop accepting scraps for our kids, our families, and our community. Like, done. And I'll speak from Katina's point of view. I don't think that I would want to be a part of an organization, a collective, a coalition that doesn't place this at a high level of importance. I just wouldn't.
I don't think that there's any pushback, Katina. If you're responding to my comments, I'm fully in favor of supporting advocacy work. I'm not skilled in it or knowledgeable about how to do it, which is why I shared what I shared. But I don't remember from the conversation last week that there was any resistance to that. Am I misspeaking, anyone? So I'm quite comfortable with adding it in as another gear or wherever it goes on the drawing.
Gear's the right word, yeah. It would either be a gear, oh yes, a big gear is what we call a strategy, and then the smaller gears are tactics and actions.
I want to say that I am sensitive to Jenny's position. So Jenny, don't think I'm ignoring that. I'm not. I heard you.
No, not at all. Not at all. I totally
I
understand.
also
I
think that-
just know that I have to be careful.
Right.
I mean, I'm all for it.
But I also think we have an opportunity for those organizations that may be connected to a nationwide organization or another entity, is that we have an opportunity to also educate them and bring them along and perhaps change some of their perspective or policies and procedures as it relates to this type of work, if we show them how it can be done and how well it can be done.
Katina, what I like about this is that it's modeling what we are already writing out as our own methodologies of how to address illiterate Kansas City. And so you're just saying it's dual roles for us in this coalition, but also to do the work in our organizations and bring those along with us that we have proximity to. I see it as like a spectrum. If I'm looking at it linear, like a spectrum that we're all going to fit in somewhere. There are going to be some folks like you who have the skills and the training to go all the way into advocacy. And then there are going to be some who are in Jenny's position who are like, listen, y'all can go so far. The rest of us will fit somewhere in the middle, but even in fitting somewhere in the middle, what I think is really interesting about this, the thought, so thank you for bringing it up. What I think is really interesting about the thought is that is how you have systemic change and make sure we don't revert back to what was that didn't work. You're doing the work in the present, and then you're dismantling what was before and bringing people into the new system. Because half of the time systems stop because folks are just like, while we're building a plane and flying it, we get burnt out and then it drops. And so having both and bringing people along with us as we're making that change would be, even if we had to tap out ourselves as being the starters of this coalition, that whatever our legacy can continue to bring about change. And maybe we jump back on the plane some other time or in another organization, who knows? But that still leaves it open that we're able to continue the work to continue to both dismantle and create.
And I think those viewpoints, parallel to what, Adam shared about the different roles within the advisory council for the one he shared in Tulsa. It reminds me of the way the Diverse Books for All Coalition works, where we're all members. But we each kind of sort ourselves by our expertise and abilities into the different advocacy work or you know, focus areas that the coalition is addressing. And I mean, we know the diversity of strengths and backgrounds that this group has, so I think that would work really well.
Right.
I guess
Yeah.
one thought I had, and I don't want to open a whole can of worms, but if the coalition wanted to focus itself on advocacy, which I mean, I can certainly see that as a key priority, does the purpose that we have align with that? I guess I'm just, or is the purpose going to
Yeah. Purpose and
fit
outcomes.
that? Yeah, I guess I want to make sure that we're not straying off that we're aligned.
I think it's Thomas, the model. So the organization I looked at is something that I've held dear since my college age. So I worked with the Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools program. And so Children's Defense Fund, and it, as an organization, advocates for children no matter what. Like that's their storefront, essentially. Advocate children. But the Freedom Schools leg of that, and they have different legs. The Freedom Schools leg of it saying that across the country, many of us will do after-school programs and summer programs collectively using the similar curriculum and having the same training to administer the curriculum. Both can exist, but they have focus. So when you think of Children's Defense Fund, you're thinking both and as the advocacy component, and you're also thinking of it as the literacy component of one on the same, but essentially folks have a specialty in which area they fit in better.
Yeah, so it's not an either or, it's sort of both and, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that question is really good, just to kind of pull up the purpose and outcomes statements, and to try to understand where, like, whether advocacy fits in this. I think it does, but where does it? And maybe if it's going to be a major focus, should we draw it out a little bit more? So our purpose statement, you know, I think I'm gonna throw out an assumption for the sake of, you know, argument that this is, I think, broad enough if we're talking about Kansas City as a model literate city, that would encompass advocacy. I see some nods, but I'm totally open to counter arguments. But then the outcomes, I think, would be the place maybe to look a little bit deeper. And this doesn't have the bonus outcome about just in general KC literacy is having benefits, seeing benefits from increased literacy. But yeah, what do you think about these outcomes and the advocacy piece of it? I suppose, you know, is it important to add something like policy? There is policy change, you know, or, you know, do we want to really make an explicit outcome to add to that? Or does this still kind of get to what we're trying to get to, and advocacy is a method?
I think it's folded into our purpose. I think our purpose is great as it stands. And I think our outcomes are fine. I think it moves to that method because we can't get to our outcomes and or achieve our purpose if we haven't anticipated, strategically planned for, and have something in place to address the barrier. Like when we get trained in mobilizing and organizing work, one of the things we always ask ourselves is, who will be the naysayers? to what I said earlier about Lauren saying, who are the pests in the garden? And then how do I plan to address the themes, the issues that they will bring up to hold us hostage or keep us from moving forward to achieve the goal or getting to the purpose, right? And so, yeah, I think our purpose is great. I think our outcomes are great. I definitely think that it lives in this methodology part.
Okay. Any other reactions?
I think having the methodology part in advocacy, having each of the strategies actually have advocacy attached to them. Because when you think about it, big P and little p exists whatever we do. So the layperson in the community advocating for, we had a run of literacy where everybody did the whole build the house books, or well, y'all know what I'm talking about. So essentially some people, that is all they can get to say, let me take my book on the corner to make sure people have access to it. That's one realm. Then you have the level where we're talking about policy change and dealing with politics. And so that will be something that's organizing people. So that is way different than someone, let me take my book and put it in the house on the corner so people have access to it. So each of them have different avenues in which they could still contribute to advocacy, but we're meeting them where they are. And so once I can imagine taking my books to the corner and like then going down the rabbit hole was like, well, what else can I do? I'm just giving away my books. That comes organically with being someone who's interested in something. And so still having the methodology is like, if you're moving from step 1 to step 2, here's how it goes. It kind of reminds me of like that race off the couch to 5K type of thing. Here are the steps you take along the way. So using that same type of methodology, but it's helping a layperson, but it's also assisting in helping change system for someone who might be well versed in it as well.
Right. Okay, so we're talking about advocacy as a cross-cutting tactic, essentially across the strategies. I like that. All right. Well, I think we've made a lot of progress in this conversation. I'd like to give us some time in small groups. That's really important to get us started. So what I'm going to say is making a couple little tweaks to our layout. We have these four strategies, and within those 4 strategies, we have kind of the beginnings of brainstorming of tactics and actions. And then also I've put at the top cross-cutting themes that we've talked about. So that would be training and education and advocacy. So we can just keep in mind for all of the strategies that, those are going to be playing a part as we're doing our brainstorming and building those out. But what I'd like to do is break out into small groups. We'll have 4 groups and 4 strategies. So in your small group, you'll be getting into, what do you think, are the major tactics and actions that we'll need to be able to turn these gears. And again, this is just a first stab at it. I would really encourage you not to be perfectionistic. It really is a brainstorm of just getting all the ideas out on the table, and then we'll have more time to sort and refine from there. Everybody clear on the task? And I will make a shared Google Doc right now, and I'll drop it in the chat for everybody. So you can be putting your notes in that. Any questions before we go to group?
So we're all working on all 4?
No, so you'll be assigned to a specific strategy. Each group will work on one strategy. Good question. So group 1, you'll be working on strategy 1, group 2 will be working on strategy 2, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and we'll bring everybody back. We'll be hopping around as always to kind of see what progress you're making and at what pace. We'd like to give you some real time to make progress on this. So I'd say at least 15, hopefully 20 minutes we'll be able to give you to make a start. Okay, So grab that link to the Google Doc I just popped in there, and I'll open all the rooms now.
Oh, that's what everybody is gone. Jenny and I were like, hold on. Where's everybody at?
We're coalescing.
Hey, welcome back. I think everybody's back. So yeah, I hope you all saw Adam's broadcast. We'd love it if we don't have time for a long shout out, unfortunately, but if someone from each group could just give a couple of highlights from the conversation, what was top of mind for you, you know, and talking through your gear. So starting with group one, if that's all right, which is the Sustainable Coalition Structure.
Yeah, that was my group. And I was taking notes, so I'll go ahead and talk. But through the course of the conversation, it became very clear that we needed, first of all, a common language with defined like terms, because we talk about like the coalition and the members and the leadership and what do we mean by any of that, and we use them interchangeably. So first of all, like establishing and defining common language would be a great activity for a group to do. And then you know, we just started to drill down into what does it look like to, you know, start acting on strategic planning, deciding on, you know, what our incorporation status should be depending on our priorities. What does membership look like and what levels of membership will we have? Making sure that we, you know, based on our community stakeholder mapping, we want to both, you know, look at some sort of talent matrix to say, okay, in the coalition, we have everybody represented, or we need areas of expertise from this world, I don't know. And then do the same thing with those who are serving as advisors or like different levels of membership of the coalition. So, you know, do we have all the geographic areas represented? How far are we going with the geographic areas? That kind of stuff. So a lot of it is, you know, defining, identifying, researching, and then of course trying to figure out how to pay for it all.
All right, beautiful, thank you.
Mhm.
Group two.
Jenny, you want to talk to you, Chuck?
Go for it.
Jillian, I had to chuckle because everything comes down to how are we going to pay for this? So partnerships, muses, find mentors and muses locally and nationally. So continuously working at educating ourselves of who those folks are, who have created or are supporting to create the literate city. Field trips to visit the Muse coalitions in other cities, building strategic partnerships with organizations within and outside the sector. Literacy champions and ambassadors, partners and sponsors. I don't think we added any. Oh, create an MOU with partners to define roles, responsibilities, times, and efforts. So group one, we were with you. Tap into existing national affiliations. Could be a good starting point. Advocacy, training on what a 501c3 is, mostly because Jenny and I were talking. What we do is usually as nonprofits just stay away from advocacy because we know it's only a certain percent of time that we dedicate. So someone clearly defining to us how much time and what does it actually look like. And then strategizing behind that, communications with partners, so creating like a toolkit or toolbox so that we are all on the same page when it comes to advocacy around literacy. Strategize who the partners are or will be, such as the World Foundation, PNC, Hall Family Foundation, Coalition members, the founding, Coalition partners not yet at the table, representing a population or underrepresented populations not yet at the table as well. What does that look like for you to be a partner? Is it dues, free, we're on a board, sweat equity, or finances, are questions that we have for points of clarity.
All right, great. Okay, moving right along. I know we're pressed for time. Group three. And it can just be highlights, guys. So don't feel like you have to talk through every little piece.
Sure. So our big takeaways were collecting the data that already exists out in the world and framing it for literacy. So one really important point we talked about was pulling data that doesn't always seem like it's directly related to literacy and tying that through line of how this does impact literacy and just making that obvious. And then probably the last point to make is making sure the information that we pulled together and all these talking points are really accessible for our community to start owning as their own information to share, kind of the idea of neighbors being able to share with other neighbors so that the whole community buys into this idea and it's not just us championing it, but that the whole city is excited about it.
Beautiful. That's really exciting. All right. Last but not least, group 4.
Go for it, Lauren.
Oh, me? Okay. We talked about in this like community outreach and engagement, like a big part of that is going to be working with all the different school districts that we have in our service area. And what that looks like, understanding what kind of, we've heard about the letters training that the teachers are doing, but do they actually have the resources they need to employ that training? Maybe doing like a resource assessment in schools, understanding more about kindergarten readiness and what kindergarten readiness indicators all of our districts are using, because I bet you dollars to donuts they are not all the same. And also we really want to do a deep dive into family engagement and some kind of tapping into the existing neighborhood and caregiver advocacy organizations that already exist, like neighborhood organizations, Parent Power Lab, PLTI, people who are already trained in working with local government, and building strong bonds with them. And then definitely focusing on maybe before anything else, our marketing strategy, coming up with a name and figuring out how we're going to communicate to people about literacy across the lifespan, and with a focus on addressing marginalized communities and focus on language equity.
Great. Wonderful.
Just
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing out the ideas. We don't have a lot of time for discussion, but if you did hear something or you're reading something from a different group and it's sparking an idea for you, I encourage you guys to kind of talk behind the scenes, to share ideas, or, hey, this relates to something that was in our gear, coordinate in that way. In terms of homework, we don't have a meeting next week because it is one of those US federal holidays. My calendar's not loading.
President's Day.
President's Day, yes. So no meeting, but we would ask that if possible that you meet with your group either during that time or well, it wouldn't necessarily be during that time, but at any time of your choosing, meet with your group to continue to flesh out and really, hone in on those tactics and action steps, so that for our next meeting, you'll essentially be presenting a draft of it for, group feedback. That makes sense for an assignment?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, I know we're at 12:30. If anybody has really top of mind pluses or deltas, I'd love to hear maybe one person, maybe 2 people speak, and then we'll close. Pluses or deltas?
I liked that Katina had something she wanted to say and that we stopped and were able to listen to her, and through that conversation found out it was something we could weave throughout the whole plan. So thank you, Katina, for speaking up, and thank you for everybody for pausing and listening.
I love that. All right. Okay. We'll let you free. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will meet back on the 26th, Monday after next. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye.